Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. I always do that. I always have to pause a little bit because it's like I have to think about the name of the show. I always do that because it's like I typically end up recording these last, so it's like my brain is fried by the end. I've kind of mentioned that before. Nevertheless, Centric, where I talk about crime dramas that I like. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Castle Blindspot, as well as a unsuspecting episode of Person of Interest, because I didn't find out until like yesterday that there was going to be an episode today. So that's kind of interesting. I guess that's kind of my fault because I tried to not watch every preview for everything. Some things I make exceptions for, but nevertheless, it's kind of my fault for not looking at the previews to find out there was going to be an episode today and tomorrow. But nevertheless, moving on with the episode. Let's start off with Castle, which was a very nice episode. I really liked this episode. It was, to me, it'd make a perfect Halloween episode, which, granted, Castle's had a few Halloween episodes. They're always very spooky, and I really like them, but it's kind of sad just the way the season lined up, because this would legitimately make a really good Halloween episode. I did like the title card. They don't do that often enough. I kind of wish they did it more than they do, but it's still nice when they do it. You know, they transition those, like, different title cards. Like, this one was kind of like black, not really black and white, but kind of grayscaled, and then it's to represent the fact is that the power's out in the city. This case dealt with a mental patient named Shaw. He essentially broke into Castle's, PI office and, kind of dropped dead in front of them from a stab wound. And essentially the entire episode is trying to figure out what the whole situation is. Basically, we end up finding out that basically he's kind of obviously a little crazy, that basically he believes that a higher calling for him is to stop the devil, specifically the Antichrist. Essentially, he got put in a mental institute because 20 years or so ago, he ended up attacking a family because he was under the impression that their son was the Antichrist. It was kind of brought up in this episode, the comparison. Still using that word comparison, to the Omen, because essentially that's why he went after him, and that was a big focus of this episode because of the wounds he sustained and all the markings he put on his body, as well as in his Bible, drawing on his demons. Castle was dead set on believing like a demon killed him, which, obviously it's one of Castle's wild theories that everyone's just kind of against. But then multiple times throughout the episode, it's kind of like, okay, Castle might not be crazy because there's all these weird things that people are just kind of like, everyone else is kind of just, pushing aside. That's, like I said, one of my favorite aspects about Castle is because he comes up with these crazy theories, and then like sometimes by the end of the episode, you're still unsure whether he was actually wrong or not. Because it's like, okay, realistically, it's like, okay, obviously he can't be right about this, but it's like the way things play out, you're kind of like, was he wrong? But we ended up finding out the person who Shaw believed to be the Antichrist is that guy Victor, who is Eddie from the Flash. The moment I saw him, I was like, oh, Eddie. If you don't watch the Flash, it won't mean much to you, because I don't know the actor's name. He was also on Quantico, which, spoiler alert, I don't watch Quantico. Not saying it's a bad show, just haven't bothered checking it out. It seems like an interesting show, I just haven't taken the time to check it out. But spoiler alert, his character died up there. But it's like, he played a very creepy character this episode. Just the way he was just like, just his mannerisms and stuff like that. I was like, man, you play creepy good. And I like the fact is when he was shaking Castle's hand, because Castle was so dead set on believing this whole demon thing, that he ended up wearing that like little cross thing on his arm. And the moment he touched him, like a little static electricity, and he's like, oh, you got a little static cling to you. And just like Castle kind of looked to Ryan and Esposito, and they like, I feel like out of anybody, the person probably most likely to believe him is Ryan, because I kept moments in the episode where it seemed like Ryan was kind of a little bit like, okay, that was a little weird. That's just my situation in seeing it. But it was like a really nice episode because there were multiple instances where it's kind of like, oh, this is actually a demon. There was one, some of them were kind of explained. The fact is that every time Castle would look into like video feeds and like pictures that were taken from the crime scene, he'd see like a glow around his neck. It looked like it might be a glow that takes the form of an X, kind of representing him being marked for death by a demon or something. And there was an instance where basically him, Ryan, and Esposito were walking down the sidewalk, and basically, what was that? It was something that fell from scalpel that was on the side of a building. Something from it fell, and Castle was just super paranoid. It was dead set on believing that a devil was after him. I just love the fact is that there was that point in it. Basically, there was that surveillance camera which basically showed the victim Shaw walking, and then like it was glitching out, and every so often you see like a shadowy, like elusive figure kind of pop into frame, and then it kind of disappears, and you could barely make it out. And it's just like it was never explained in the episode. Obviously, they were just saying like, oh, obviously it's just glitchy, but it was never brought back to that. It was just like it's like yeah, it was glitchy, accept it type of thing. So, but but they ended up finding out that the killer was the lady. Essentially, Shaw had a connection to a guy in the past. It was a PI, but that PI kind of got a lot of flack, when Shaw attacked that family 20 years ago, which surprisingly enough, Victor's family, his mom and dad survived, obviously, but sometime later they ended up dying in a freak avalanche accident or something like that. So he obviously is very wealthy, and he does all this good stuff. He's like a good philanthropist. I struggled with that word so hard just then. Basically making it's something to deal with water, trying to make good, clean, accessible water or something like that. I don't know. He does like a lot of good stuff, but essentially the PI who kind of helped Shaw a little bit kind of gather information on the family, kind of, fell in bad times. And the reason why Shaw got killed was because he came back into their lives. Obviously the PI, he died like a year after Shaw got locked up in a mental institute. But essentially, his wife killed that PI's wife killed Shaw because he was like, basically he ruined their lives, with all this craziness last time, and she didn't want to take the chance he would do it again, so that's why she killed him. We still necessarily, I guess we did. I was about to say, like, when Castle was in the vault, which is another thing I want to bring up in this episode about, is like, because Haley asked him, it's like, oh, what's in the vault? He's like, I don't know. She's like, you haven't opened it? It's like, literally, Castle's had this place for a while now, and we're just kind of getting in touch, we're just finding out about this vault, and he's never opened it. He's like, and I did like his reasoning for it, because basically he's like, honestly, no matter what, nothing behind that door will be as good as I imagine it to be. Basically, he prefer his imagination over what's actually in there. So he's like, as long as I keep it closed, I can just keep it, whatever, because of my imagination, I can believe whatever is behind that door. So it's a weird reason not to open something, but it's also kind of like very genius, because it's like the moment you open it, you will end up, no matter what's in there, it will always, dash your expectations. So that was just kind of something I was like, okay, I can kind of get behind that reasoning. But I was like about to say, though, we never found out who it was that attacked him in the vault when he ended up finding that angel blade. And what the whole red eye situation was. It's like, but to me, because I was always under the impression that, night vision goggles looked green, but I guess it's like, maybe depending on the brand, maybe they don't look green. Maybe that's just, because that's 100% based on my knowledge of, from movies, TV shows, and video games. So maybe that's not the case. Maybe different levels of night vision goggles have different, levels. Maybe one's infrared or something like that, so maybe that's why it was red. But it's like, when Castle got knocked out and the person it obviously ended up being the guy who tried to kill Victor at the end of the episode. Essentially, his dad was kind of a believer in all of this, and so he's trying to fulfill his dad's wish, and because he was a true believer himself, and he's trying to kill Victor, and Castle ended up showing up and stopping him in top, and he ended up getting, he wasn't killed, but he was knocked down by all those pipes, and Victor was kind of like, oh, it's kind of lucky that all that happened. And then Castle was just kind of like, yeah, you're not really the Antichrist, are you? And he, Victor, every time I'm saying his name, I just want to say Eddie. Just like, oh, you have such funny sense of humor, Mr. Castle. He's like, you saved my life, so I owe you. And just, anything you basically want, I'll try my best to do it for. I'll give you anything you want. And shook his hand and just had this look on his face. And Castle was there kind of like, when he walked away, Castle was like, did I just make a deal with the devil? So a very interesting episode. Like I said, I really like it when Castle kind of does that, like creepy. It does creepy well, and it's just like multiple instances of like, kind kind of like, it's like with the way things are, it's never 100% settled. Like, oh, and it was totally 100% in Castle's imagination. You can believe that, but on some level, I'd like to believe the guy probably is the Antichrist, just because it'd be interesting if that was the case. But you ended up finding out some certain things, like for instance, the whole thing about the reason why every time he was in a picture or something like, or a video camera, the reason why he had that light around his neck, it was because like the light reflecting off the zipper of his jacket was what it was. I did like the very end of the episode where Beckett and Castle kind of messed with Haley and Alexis and kind of scared him a little bit, and they kind of left the place. Which, like Beckett is mean because she saw how freaked out Castle was, and a little earlier in the episode, she scared him like twice, and it's just like, man. But granted, I guess, that's kind of one of the reasons why he loves her so much is because she's so quirky and fun and willing to do stuff like that, kind of scare the shit out of you type of thing. So, I mean, I guess that's just one of the amazing things about her personality, I guess, that he, loves so much about her. And, as an audience, we love about her too. But like I said, it's lovable, it's cute, adorable, and lovable, and at the same time a little mean doing that to him. But I did love the fact is that she's like, oh, he's like, that was genius of you. Now can we play Naked Twister? It's like, it literally brought that up like 3 times in the episode. He literally brought it up like 2 minutes before that, and he brought it up at the very beginning of the episode. It's like, well, the lights are out, so this is the perfect time to play Naked Twister. So. But like I said, overall, very nice episode, very creepy, and I do appreciate the creepy element to it. It wasn't necessarily scary, but it's just like, I do like dark and eerie. I'm not a huge fan of horror because I don't really watch that many horror movies. I don't have a problem with horror. It's just not a genre that I go on my way seeking, but nevertheless, I guess really more so than anything, you consider it more of a suspense episode rather than a kind of a horror episode, kind of suspense thriller, I guess. But it turns out next week is the season finale, which kind of snuck up on me. Like I saw that, I saw what was going down next episode. I won't spoil it for you, just because it's like, oh, we kind of got some stuff out of context. But it seems like it's some stuff dealing with Lockset. But it's just like, I was like, wow, it's just like, and Castle season finales next month. I was like, wow, that just came out of nowhere for me. So it'd be very interesting to see how this whole Lockset situation is going to play out, and to see like how this season is going to. It looks like some pretty heavy stuff is going to go down next episode, so I can't wait to see what happens. Now moving on to Blindspot, which was a very interesting episode. Essentially, we had different groups of people locked into different sections of the FBI, because essentially it seems like it's like a drill at first, but essentially someone is hacking into the FBI. They're trying to get the information on a lot of FBI agents that are undercover. It ends up turning out to be this couple. It seems like they're working for the cartel, and basically they want to sell the information, because it's like, we sell all this information to the cartel, being able to tell you like, oh, these people who are undercover, these are their real identities as FBI agents, fetch a high price and they'd be set for the rest of their life. So it was kind of that situation. And basically they kind of tricked the system of the building to kind of think like it was a drill. And so we had different pair-offs. We had Patterson and Jane, which led to a very interesting conversation a little earlier before the drill happened. It's like about Jane and her tattoos, because Jane was working out and kind of getting stared at. It's just like the tattoos kind of draw a lot of attention. Kind of Patterson throwing out something that I'd never given thought before. She's like, one, you could get rid of the tattoos. She's like, but is that really okay? She's like, well, yeah, basically we have all your tattoos recorded. But she's like, well, if you ended up finding out, maybe you always end up finding like some more invisible, tattoos. But it's basically like, we've got it all recorded on the system. So there's like legitimately no reason for you to have those tattoos. As an FBI agent, I'm obligated to tell you, like, oh, keep the tattoos. As a friend, she's like, basically, it's your body, you make the decision. It's like, what would Jane do? It's like, would she keep the tattoos or would she get rid of them? It's like, because, they're a constant reminder of just the fact is that she's not, the person she was as Taylor. Or, it's a constant reminder of the fact is that she doesn't know much about her life, and she'll always get those looks from people. Obviously, it's come up in the show a couple times where they just covered up her tattoos, so maybe she might not get rid of them. Maybe she'll I feel like it's too much of a hassle to just simply just cover them up with makeup. It's like, getting rid of them is the easiest thing to do, but it's like, would she get rid of them? Because, if it weren't for those tattoos, she wouldn't be in the situation she is. She wouldn't found Kurt back in her life again. She wouldn't have met the friends she has, The FBI are the people she's closest tattoo. So it's like, like there's give and take with the tattoo, mostly take, but there was some advantages to him. We also had Kurt and Dr. Borden basically leading to a conversation, because early in the episode, him and Sarah were basically like finalizing some stuff about their dad's will, basically kind of a power of attorney type of stuff, which is like, you see Kurt kind of hesitant, and you see his sister kind of just going, Sarah kind of going like, because basically them signing this is kind of finalizing it, and you see Kurt, apparently him and Borden kind of have this situation where they use their therapy sessions, as just an excuse talking about sports. But basically, Borden kept bringing it up and, trying to get him to talk a little bit more about everything. He's like, for the longest time, you thought your dad was, responsible for Taylor disappearing. But you turn out, he's like, no, I'm glad that I ended up being proven wrong, that that we've reached this point that, I was able to learn the truth. But he's like, I don't mean it just in, a personal sense. He's like, the fact is you were wrong, so it might affect you on a professional sense, because it's like, as an FBI agent, you trust your instincts, your gut a lot, and it's like, it proved wrong for you in this situation. For the longest time, he was sure his dad was behind it, but it's like, now that he ended up being proved wrong, maybe he'll start doubting his instincts as an FBI agent. That was kind of something that was interesting that was brought up. It was also brought up as like, talking about his dad in general, about how the fact is he feels about his dad, like, is really sick and, dying. And basically he was saying, like, the biggest concern for him was Sawyer, because it's like, Sawyer may be a little kid, but he kind of understands what's going on. And it's like, basically kind of made a comparison, did it again. I'm literally going to point it out every time I use that word from now on. Basically that, he was around the same age that Sawyer is now when he found out about the whole Taylor situation and his dad. That basically grief makes people act out in different ways. Some people handle it, depends on the circumstances. Some people handle it better. Some people internalize it. Some people kind of go nuts and, act out. And there's kind of a backlash from it. There's no there's no good way to deal with it. There's no good way. There's no bad way. It just, there's certain, in the situation of death's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing that is, and there's nothing you really can do about it but just accept it as it is. We also had Tasha and Mayfair being locked up together. It was very interesting because in this episode we found out, I kind of skipped over it, but Mayfair called in the FBI about the whole situation. I mean, I guess it makes sense that she would call in the cops. I just wasn't for sure how she'd handle it. So I feel like if Tom was still alive, she probably would have called him before anyone else. But in this situation, I didn't know, like, it was very interesting. I didn't know, like, for sure that she was, but it's like, it kind of makes sense. It's like, obviously she'd call this stuff in, especially this is a woman that she liked. But basically, the prosecutor dude, the one that's basically been blackmailing Tasha into helping him, essentially kind of is like, he comes there with the pretenses of like, oh, I'm here to make sure that you're safe. Essentially, he's taking over the kind of the whole operation a little bit just to keep an eye on Mayfair, use it as an opportunity to dig up some stuff on her. And then we had, which that situation, but basically Tasha and Mayfair kind of quickly picked up on it, that, the prosecutor and Tasha kind of had a thing. Obviously Tasha's like, no, he tried to hit on me once, that's why we know each other. But Mayfair kind of sees through it. She basically brings up a situation. She's like, there's a situation where there was someone more powerful than me in a powerful position that was like, okay, let's do this thing. And she's like, it's very morally ambiguous, morally great type of situation, but she went along with it. Things happened, and she kind of got left at the one, essentially holding the bag in the situation. That powerful person just kind of up and disappeared and left her holding the bag. And she kind of had to suffer the consequences from it, which I don't know whether that's her referencing Tom or it was just a completely different situation. Essentially saying, like, no matter whatever deal you have with him, make sure it's something that you can sleep with. Because she's like, because of that situation, she's never really had a good night's sleep. It's just something that's always weighed on her. She's like, make sure that whatever the situation is, because, essentially in her mind, she's like, you're doing this because you wanted a position. Because she asked Tasha, like, what do you want? Eventually, what do you want to do? And basically, Tasha's like, I want to be in a position you are. Basically, I want to run a team of my own like you. You know, because like I said, she kind of brought it up, was it last episode? That basically she respects Mayfair like a lot, that she wanted to be like Mayfair. So, but she's basically like, you just have to make sure that you can sleep with whatever decision, whatever you're doing right now, make sure that you're able to sleep with it. So Tasha eventually does break down and tells Mayfair the whole truth about why she's doing all this. And Mayfair's like, why didn't you come to me? It's like, you know, like, how would I have started a conversation? It's like simple. You would have trusted her and brought this to her attention, because it's like a lot of the stuff he's blaming her for. Granted, yes, her and Tom have a big secret, but it's not... It's a level of corruption in that sense, but it's like, other than that, they haven't done anything. It's not like they're making it seem like, oh, she has something, because like basic point out, in fact, is a lot of people in her life have died. Essentially blaming her for Tom's murder is kind of what he's aiming for. And Tasha was like, honestly, I didn't really know what to believe, but Mayfair's like, how can I keep you on the team, because I don't even know that, you know, how can I trust someone who doesn't even trust me? Like, so how can I keep you on the team? And it's just like, you see Sasha is a little affected by it. She's kind of tearing up a little bit. It's just because like she legitimately respected Mayfair, and it's just, this whole situation just got completely out of control. And then also we had Sarah Reed, as well as that attorney, the one for Kurt and Sarah, who got me in this episode. Like she kept catching me off guard, because she was legitimately losing her mind, because she was just so like, she's like, I can't handle, you know, closed spaces or wide open spaces either. And she was in there popping pills, and essentially Reed and Sarah were talking about the relationship, and she's like, oh, I see why we're stuck here, because I'm here to fix your relationship. That's what we're here for. She's like, the word hard is so interesting. Hard. It's like, what, she is legitimately out of her damn mind, especially when the situation happened with the elevator later on. Like, Sarah and Reed are discussing about getting out of the elevator, because the elevator was rising up to the floor, which apparently that building is 70 like freaking floors. Freaking astounding. I didn't know it was that big. Granted, it's like, I guess I never really paid attention to the outside building. It's just like, it's, you know, I'm paying more attention to the fact that, oh yeah, this is the floor that their team works on, but it's like, I never paid attention to the building. I mean, it makes sense. This is in New York, so it's like, New York's got some pretty tall buildings, but it just never registered on my mind that like, this is a 70 floor building. That's crazy. But, you know, like in that situation when they were trying to like figure a way out of there, she was literally kind of out of it. She was like passed out a little bit, and it's just like, are you really going to be like knocked out this entire situation? But they kind of got her up in there. But that whole situation with the elevator about to drop, that was super clutch. Got like 13 seconds left on the clock. Reed's got his hands on a hose, and literally the elevator falls. You know, granted, you know, he's holding on, and the elevator drops and he goes through the, you know, the hole that's open. So it's like, wow. I was almost terrified, because I was like, oh my god, I hope this doesn't end up with a situation like, because the moment Reed let Sarah go first, and I was like, okay, I was like, oh, never mind, he's going alone too. But I was like, oh, that's not a good thing, because it's going to tear, and it started to tear. I was like, crap. It's like, okay, just send Sarah up first, and then it's coming back. And I was like, oh crap, this is super clutch, but they made it in time. One of my favorite parts of this episode was like Patterson opening the doors, because she was trying to unlock them. And then she got the first one unlocked. She's like, let's get started in a second. It's going to take me a while. Well, Kurt picked up a fire hydrant, threw it in the window, and smashed it in the one that led to her lab. And then you just see Patterson kind of like, okay. She's like, make sure you don't break anything else. He's like, sure thing. Yes, ma'am. And it's just like, that was just the fastest way. It's just like, I love the expression on her face. She was just kind of like, what the F did you just do? Got a little bit more about Kurt and Jane. Ended up finding out that basically brings up the fact is that she was a bit of, you know, when they were building the fire to kind of throw the system off, that's essentially bringing up the fact that she was a bit of a pyro back in the day, which is very interesting. Which, it was kind of interesting, because you see her set the fire, and she's looking at it, you see her kind of smirk a little bit. So it's like, there's some part of that pyro still in there, I can only assume. Which is very interesting, because this episode was also an interesting aspect, was that they were very playful in this episode. Like when they're climbing up the vent, trying to get to the evidence room, which I'm going to talk about that in a quick second. But the fact is that like she was like kind of slowing down. She's like kind of like, oh, this is harder. It's harder. It was easier going down than it is now. And then Kurt's like, you need to take a break. She's like, no, do you? And just made a little game out of it. Even like when they were racing up to the top to save everyone in the elevator, There's like basically Kurt's like the last one up the stairs, ends up having to, buys a soda or whatever. It's just like, it was so interesting how they were so playful in this episode. It's just, I don't know, it's like we see it kind of slip through, even amongst the tension of everything else. But what I want to point out, what I want to talk about the evidence room, I love the fact is that that's how they armed themselves in this situation, because basically trying to get to their weapons would have taken a lot longer, more time that they didn't have. But what I want to bring up the fact is, they're contaminating evidence because, I mean, at the very least, I hope those are cases that are closed, that they're getting those weapons from. But even if they are, that's still contaminated evidence, and I'm surprised that that's probably going to turn into something bigger later on. I mean, granted, you can probably like get some wiggle room around it. It's like, yeah, I got those weapons kind of got turned up in a situation because it's like, okay, I forgot. Like, like they kind of needed to be used in the situation. It's like the way the situation is, you can excuse like them being, the evidence being contaminated. Not unless those are just weapons held there, not necessarily tied specifically to any case. It's just like, oh, these were acquired here, here, and here. But it's like, as evidence, it doesn't really matter. Because there was a gold gun, but do correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that gold gun Rich.com's like the first time we met him? Or was that connected to that other guy from the most recent Rich.com episode? Like, that guy had golden guns. Was that from that? I don't know whether that was a slight throwback to that, or because I could have sworn Rich.com had one the first time you met him was a gold gun. Maybe that was, like I said, the most recent episode with him. Maybe the one from a few weeks ago. Maybe that's what that was kind of a throw to. But I don't know. That was just something interesting that was in the back of my mind. But really, the biggest part of this episode, those parts of the episode were great and fine, but what really got you is like, what was it, like last 4 or 5 minutes of episode, basically you find out everything from everything Jane's been doing for the organization she's working for, all the stuff Oscar asked her to do, switching out Mayfair's pen, the flash drive thing was that last episode, putting that device on the vehicle, Carter's body, even the whole situation with Mayfair's ex, the money she got for her ex, the 48,000 for her to get a new identity and run, all of it was for the sole purpose of framing her. I was like, oh my, the moment everything started going down and then like Jane is piecing it together, I'm like, oh my god, all of this was for a setup. That was so bloody genius, because I was like, what the heck is Carter's body for? It's like, I didn't really see any. It was just like, oh my god, that was so good. They played her so hard. And the sad thing is, especially because I saw the preview to next week's episode, Jane had no idea, and it's just like, she's super pissed about it. They like set Mayfair up hard, dude. And the fact is that the 48,000 that she gave to her ex ended up being on that lady's person, because you end up finding out that lady is actually a private eye. So like this setup is extensive. I knew she couldn't be trusted, though. She wasn't who she's claimed to be. She was a freaking private eye detective. So she was probably hired by the organization. I don't know why I said it like that. By the organization that Jane is connected to. Probably to keep an eye on Mayfair, but they, like I said, they didn't tell her what they were going to do. I brought that up last episode. I was like, maybe she was connected and they didn't tell her anything about what they were going to do. Maybe, that might be the case, might not be, but it's like she's a private eye, and just this whole situation was highly set up. And the fact of the matter is, her ex is connected to this too, because it's like, I forgot about it. Let me backtrack that. Because the money had her fingerprints on it. How about to say maybe they just faked it? Okay, there's multiple things that could be. Either they set it up so it's like, okay, we got Mayfair's, we know she removed this 48,000. Let's put her fingerprints on her because we have access to her fingerprints or something. Or legitimate, her ex is behind it, which is like, why would she do that? Maybe in the time after she committed suicide, she ended up becoming a part of the organization that Jane's working for. Maybe that's why she faked her death, was for the sole purpose of, being a part of this organization. She needed to disappear. Maybe that's why. Or maybe during that time she did become a part of it, or got blackmailed or manipulated by them. I don't know what the case may be, but it's just like, oh my god, poor Mayfair, dude. It's just like, poor Jane. She's going to feel like, she definitely feels like crap because she's the reason all this happened. It's just like, oh my god, that was like, one of the best twists in the show so far, in my opinion. There've been a couple, but to me that was like, that one just hit home. I was like, that was so good. I When it comes to mysteries and like crime dramas and stuff like that, I love frame ups. They're kind of like my favorite mysteries. Like when a situation leads to a character being framed for something, it's just like I like those the most. Those are kind of typically my favorite type of murder cases, technically, or like frame ups. I mean, I don't know. It's just they're the most interesting because it's like when someone puts so much effort into framing you, and you have to work hard to prove that you're not, you know, the killer in a situation. So crazy episode. Like I said, that ending amazing. Cannot wait to see where we go. Like I've seen the previews, and I cannot wait to see how this whole thing goes down in next episode. And now, finally, moving on to Person of Interest, which in this episode, I will admit, had the best opening I've ever seen for Person of Interest, where we had that little thing in the beginning where basically the machine's a little malfunctioning and the facial recognition is a little messed up. So every time it's seen, like it switches between them. Like it might be looking at John for one moment, but suddenly John turns into Root. Not just facially, but also body-wise too, just because it can't distinguish them. It's having trouble distinguishing them until it was like the funniest thing. Everybody's switching places, like John switched places with Fosco. It was just, I loved it. I legitimately, because I DVR'd it, I legitimately wound that like 3 or 4 times because I loved it. It was so amazing. But essentially, that was the main focus of this episode. Granted, that was kind of the most comedy, I guess, centric part of the episode. The rest of the episode is pretty serious. It's derived from the fact is that the machine is kind of off kilter. There's kind of been some bugs in the system, and essentially the machine has been messed up to the point like it has a hard time distinguishing time. It's having a hard time determining what's the past and what's the present. So a lot of the numbers they ended up getting this episode ended up turning out to be numbers connected to the past. Like one specific number was connected to a guy that died like 20 or so years ago or something like that. Basically, he was a guy that Fitch had used as an example of trying to teach the machine between good and bad. There's even a moment in the episode because basically they wanted the machine to kind of like, because the machine was having a hard time distinguishing, like, it recognized threats and acts of violence, but it couldn't use context to like, oh, like this is a situation that's like, oh, this is a play, this isn't a real thing. It couldn't understand subtext, so they kind of tried to do something else to the machine, kind of like, okay, look back at things and kind of take the information from past situations that you've witnessed to kind of understand context. And they ended up reviewing the team's entire work history, essentially everything that they've ever done, which led to the machine viewing them as threats. It even started messing with Root a little while, like kind of like intensifying the pain from her this thing inside of her ear that she uses to keep in contact with the machine. It was to the point that basically the machine was kind of using her as leverage, so that Finch couldn't like reboot her or anything like that. So basically, they kind of had to knock Root out, and that way she couldn't be used as leverage anymore. A multitude of things that came up in this episode, along with the machine being a little wacky. We have Finch as well as Fosco bringing up the fact is that Reese doesn't have much of a social life. That basically he's kind of had a lot of downtime because there hasn't been a lot of crime, mainly I can only assume because of Samaritan. It was something that was brought up in this episode that basically there has been a skyrocket of like crimes have gone down, but suicides have gone up, which I can only assume that Samaritans, basically its operatives, have kind of been dealing with things behind the scenes, setting stuff up to look like suicides for some reason. I don't know, it was something that's kind of brought up, but it was never really brought up again in the episode, so maybe that's something that's going to pop up later on or something. But it just seemed like some pertinent information that was kind of just thrown out there. It's like, keep this in the back of your mind. It's something we're going to go back to later. But it brought up the fact is that because Fosco was talking to like a fellow officer, and the officer was talking to him and stuff like that, and John kind of said hi to him, but the officer didn't say anything. He's like, and Fosco's like, "You're jealous, aren't you? He's like basically breaking it down. He's like, you're lonely, I mean, do you even know that cop's name? And he's just like, it's like the least you can do is try to get to know your coworkers a little bit. And that's something Finch was kind of like, oh, you have all this downtime. Why don't you try to take this opportunity to have a bit of a social life? He kind of brought up the doctor that John is dating. We haven't seen her so far in the season. Essentially, he's basically talking about the fact is that, they're going on a couple of dates and he's only told her enough to keep her safe. He hasn't told her everything. And it seems like Fosco's still in the dark, which I was expecting at the very end of the episode for them to finally bring him in on everything, including the machine. Fosco did bring up the whole like sniper thing from last episode. Well, the season 4 finale, the whole Elias and Dominic situation. He kind of brought it up again this episode, and Reese told him to kind of hush his mouth about it because don't know who's who's watching and who's listening. But because the machine was a little off kilter, it ended up hiring a lady. Basically, there was a number that he was given. It's kind of interesting. He was about to go out to look for her. She literally came to him about, like, kind of gave these crappy excuses. The moment he left and she was about to follow him, I was like, okay, whoa, what is this? Turns out she was a trained hitman. And it seems like, oh, she might have been sent by Samaritan. No, she was sent by the machine. The machine hired her to kill Reese because the machine thinks that they're bad people because of all their actions. And so basically we had Finch kind of talking to the machine, basically having to break it down, being like, basically for the machine, it's day R. So basically, there was a multitude of times that we've seen Finch has destroyed the machine. I mean, we haven't seen every single instance, but essentially, Finch has destroyed the machine for 42 times, and basically for the machine, all of its time is happening at once. So basically, it's living those 42 deaths all at once, and it's just in extreme pain. But essentially, that basically, like, it was told, like, oh, there's good and evil, and basically Finch is like, he was wrong back then, because, the way things are now, it's not as simple as, like, oh, good and evil, black and white. Like, there are varying degrees of, shades of gray in this situation, that they're currently in. And basically saying, like, people aren't just good and evil, people are a mixture of both. That, everyone is just trying to do their best, and that's what they're going to do. Like, that basically telling the machine to look at all the good that they've done. They're not necessarily good people, but not necessarily bad people. They're people just trying to do their best. They're trying to help people, as simple as that. And that, those, remembering those numbers kind of, is basically use those as an anchor, because basically the machine is a little off kilter. It, like, basically to basically give the machine a place to focus on, so that basically it can retrieve all of its data and kind of not be all like glitchy as it is. Which, it was kind of something that, I kind of noticed it in her eyes and everything, essentially, because basically you can see it when Root saw that the machine looked at them as a threat. You kind of see her getting a little broken heart, and you see it in her eyes, because to her, she loves the machine. The machine is like her god. She respects the machine. She believes that the machine can do great things, even to the point, she was like, it brought up the fact is the machine, she's like, oh, the machine thinks we're monsters. It's what Vincent said, and she was like, basically, like, maybe we are, because it showed some of the stuff that they've done, killed people, tortured people, especially Rude. But that's because of a combination of them in her life, as well as the machine, and as well as Shaw, Reese, as well as Finch, kind of made her into a better person, less likely to do necessarily not 100% of whatever it takes. And something interesting that was brought up in this episode, basically the plan is to basically have an open system for the machine. Basically, the machine can track down anything about anyone. Because, obviously the machine's always kind of been in a reserved state. Because it brings up the fact is that we look at all of Reese's information. I mean, a lot of it's redacted. Find out his mom's deceased, his dad's deceased. Apparently he had a sister. I had to go back. I don't ever remembering that coming up. But granted, Reese never really talks about his past. The only time Reese's past ever comes up is when it kind of dealt with his ex-wife. That whole situation, it being the sad story it is. To me, that's one of the saddest, like, just outcomes. It's just like, it breaks my heart that it ended the way it did. But even talked about the fact is, it's like, responsible for the death and disappearance of about 62 persons. It's kind of like, wow. And that was written in red too, so it's like pay attention to that. it was kind of sad that Root tried to use it to find Shaw, but there was like zero results. Even with the system being open, being able to track down anyone, it still wasn't able to track down Shaw. But with the machine being the way it is, it was impossible for Root to leave because essentially the machine wasn't in an active enough state where it could keep her constant identification circulating. So it's like, because Samaritan can't track them because their covers are so airtight, especially in Root's case because Root kept hers circulates pretty frequently. But by the end of the episode, because of Finch kind of talking to the machine kind of returns to the way it was before. It's like saying, I'm sorry, but it's like Finch is like, we kind of all make mistakes. It's so interesting. Like, I love that aspect of the show is the fact is that the machine is humanized. Because essentially, Finch wanted to kind of make sure the machine works and it's okay, because basically saying kind of, it trying to recover any data that it may have gotten that was kind of bugged out or might have gotten deleted, while the machine was, being, rebooted and everything and, set up again that any data that was lost could be retrieved, any bugs could be fixed. So basically, after that was all said and done, he was like, after seeing that the number system works again, then they'd basically turn it back into a closed system. It wouldn't be an open system, which Root was completely against because she's like, you're going to essentially shackle the machine again. And that's what led to this situation because basically the machine wasn't able to fight at full power. That's how we got into the situation with Samaritan. So if you basically lock it off again, we won't be able to win this battle. And essentially, he brings it up later on in the episode. He's like, you're right. For now, we'll leave it in an open system. So, but it does seem like at the very end, I don't know whether to take that as like the machine is still a little buggy or was, that was kind of the last of the bugs to leaving. But one of the people whose numbers kind of got brought up in this episode was someone Reese was looking into. He had a criminal past, but it didn't seem like he was, he was trying to live his life day by day and just trying to make the best of everything. Essentially, at the end of the episode, we see him kind of essentially being recruited by Samaritan because basically Samaritan found out about his past and felt like he was a good operative. They took his past and was like, okay, he could be useful. He could be trained in becoming a good operative. It kind of seems like it's kind of like very similar to the situation with Finch bringing in Shaw and Reese, for example. So, and I'm gonna use that favorite word again. I've used it like 4 or 5 times tonight. Like probably much more. Just by comparison. Like I said, I was going to point it out every time I use it. So, but that's kind of all I want to talk about in this episode. Do note to anyone that comes across this, there is also another episode this week. Tuesday night. I mean, by the time you're hearing this, it'll be tonight. But yeah, do remember that. It's very interesting. I just made me curious why they decided to double up on episodes this week. I'm not going to complain about it. It's like. I guess I'll complain in regard of like, it means I'm getting this series faster, which is awesome, but it also means like it's coming to an end faster. All this final chapter stuff is legitimate. It's not saying final season, but it makes me think final season. But like I said before, I don't know. Like, it depends on this season how good it does, I guess, ratings wise, as well as, review wise and stuff like that. So depending on how well it does, will probably determine whether or not it will be a huge contributing factor into whether or not it comes back from a new season. Because, if it does, it will most likely contain new characters, like I said, because things supposedly, based on what I've read, like way before this season started, is apparently things, like I said, don't end well for these characters. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe that was just kind of BS that they threw out there, but it seems like that might be the case. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.